Hello, I'm Sarah Picorni of Aviation Specialties Unlimited, and I'd like to welcome our listeners to this episode of the Aviation Conversation audio series. In this series, we'll speak with pilots, maintainers, and industry experts to better understand nighttime aerial operations and to demystify the use of night vision imaging systems in aviation. We'll also debunk myths and common misconceptions relating to night vision to promote a common understanding of this life-saving technology. So I'd like to thank our listeners for joining us for Aviation Conversations audio series. And today we're really lucky to have with us Kim Harris, who is the Director of Business Development and Sales here at Aviation Specialties Unlimited. And we're going to be talking about white phosphor night vision goggles and their use in aviation applications. So Kim's been with ASU since 2004, and he's held several different positions, including a senior instructor pilot, chief pilot, director of operations, as well as an NVGs, night vision imaging system evaluator pilot. He's got nearly 40 years of experience. He's flown in a variety of different capacities, different type of operations, and we're really excited to have him here to share information about white phosphor and a little bit about the technology. So thank you for being here, Kim, and thanks for spending time with us.
Well, thanks for asking and having me here. Happy to do this.
Wonderful. Well, if you wouldn't mind, could you share just a little bit about you and your background with our listeners?
Well, began in the flying in the military with night vision goggles back in 1979. And a variety of positions in the military, terminating as an instructor pilot in Apaches for both night vision goggles, weapons, and the NVGs system. I've flown commercially since 1984 as utility pilot, vertical reference charter, offshore, law enforcement, and air ambulance, and then most recently since 2004 with Aviation Specialties, providing instruction for pilots and crew really all over the world.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us, and we're excited to dive into some of the information about the white phosphor technology. So, first question, how are white phosphor NVGs different than the green phosphor ones that a lot of people are familiar with?
So that's an interesting question because aside from the color, green or white, there isn't any difference. If you were to take a green goggle and a white goggle and with the same performance characteristics and you measure them, they're going to provide exactly the same feedback. There really isn't any difference. The difference occurs when we see the image and how our bodies process the light that is emitted from either the green or the white phosphors.
Very good. So if we've got these side by side, it's a very similar image, but really we see some of the benefits from the experience, us as an operator about interpreting that image. So can you tell us who some of the early adopters were of the white phosphor technology and who's operating with them now?
So early adopters are across the full spectrum of commercial air ambulance, law enforcement. There are search and rescue organizations and military, Coast Guard, Special Operations, some FBI units. So it's been a pretty broad spectrum that are using the white phosphor, and more recently, our sales have been almost exclusive white phosphor. There certainly are some that are choosing to remain with the green for various reasons, but most of our sales are white phosphor NVGs.
That's probably good to know. It's really, as a newer technology, has now started to reach more of the operators that are working, 24-hour operations and in dark environments. Now it's an accepted technology, and definitely more and more people are adopting the white phosphor.
That's true, and much more in the niche industries. Aerial application, the ag operators as an example, then the firefighting, both rotary and fixed wing. As an example, in unique aircraft, we recently did a G550 and converted it for INVIS operations. So there's no limit into where you can go with INVIS and what aircraft we can install that in.
Great. So let's move on to the next question. What are the most significant differences that operators comment on when moving from a green to a white phosphor NVG?
So my experience really has been when I provide demonstration flights for operators or users, and the responses I get after a flight when I ask, what do you think? Common responses would be that they see an improved contrast ratio. The black and white image will feel more natural. And some will comment on that they feel that the eye strain is reduced. And there's some good reasons for that we can talk about.
Great. So to expound on that, can we talk a little bit about how our biology is working in our favor when we're operating with the white phosphor goggles?
Certainly. So the human eye has light receptor cells in it, rod cells that we use at night, and cone cells that we use during the day. The cone cells are three different kinds, red, green, and blue, so they're sensitive to those wavelengths, the red, green, and blue, are the primary colors. And when we use a white goggle, we're using primarily our green cone cells, which makes up about a third of our day vision. When we move to a white goggle, the white, of course, is the sum of all colors. And so now we're engaging essentially 100% of our day vision compared to a green goggle where we're really using only about a third of our day vision. So, and then additionally, the white phosphor has got a strong blue component down in the 400 nanometer range. So we actually engage a measurable portion of our rod cells that traditionally we've always said, no, we don't use rod cells at night. So the difference is now we're using 100% of our day vision plus a small portion of our night vision. And the analogy I use is it's like going from an old 486 modem line computer to a new computer using fiber optic. So that fiber optic now, we've ripped out the modem line that goes from the back of our eyeball to our brain, and we've installed a new fiber optic line. So we're getting a lot more data to our brain, and that is what leads to reduced fatigue because we're not working as hard to gather the same amount of information. Remember, the green and the white provide the same amount of information, but our brains don't have to work as hard because the contrast is higher and the data feed is broader or wider.
Yeah, that's a great point. It sounds like we really have our biology working in our favor when we're using that white phosphor technology. Great explanation. Thanks for explaining. So the next thing that I'd like to ask is, what have you personally experienced, and what's your preference between white and green?
Well, I will start out by saying I'm a traditional pilot in that I've used green for a couple decades, nearly. And so I was the leading skeptic probably here for the move from green to white. I did a lot of the early testing for both L3 and Harris when they were doing working on producing the white phosphor goggle. And what I found is that the higher contrast makes the most difference that I can think about and see. And then it's coupled with the reduced fatigue. And I'm not going to say that there's a dramatic difference in fatigue, but it's small. But every little bit helps at 2 o'clock in the morning in demanding conditions. I really feel that I can detect more detail in any given scene, which enables a slightly faster process for me to process the image and make decisions at those critical stages of any given flight profile.
That's a great point, and those critical moments are definitely want to have the best information to make the quickest decisions. So that's a great observation. All right, so how can an operator take a look at a pair of white phosphor goggles?
Well, first of all, obviously they can buy a set, which we would like, but realistically we have a good demonstration booth that we take around to the various conferences and shows that are available. Plus, we have a number of units that we can send out for a demo. The advantage being, of course, that the user can use them in their environment, their aircraft, and get real-time feedback from their flight crews.
Absolutely. So some of the shows that we've got coming up, we'll be attending HeliTech International in Amsterdam, October 16th to the 18th. We'll have our demonstration booth there. We'll also be exhibiting at the Air Medical Transportation Conference in Phoenix, Arizona, October 22nd to 24th. And then here in Boise, where we're headquartered, we will be at the HAI Firefighting Safety Conference, which is November 16th to the 18th. And then December 3rd to 6th, we'll be at the National Agricultural Aviation Association Conference in Reno, Nevada. So those are all opportunities to get your hands on a pair of goggles. And we're going to have the demo booth at most of those, definitely at HeliTech, at the Agricultural Aviation Show, so people can actually, get in a dark environment, take a look through the goggles and see what those look like. So we invite anybody to come visit us. So on to the next question. How can operators upgrade from a green goggle to a white?
That's an interesting question as well, because that's has proven to be a challenge, because just changing out the tubes, although a simple process in itself, changes the part number of the goggle and creates a problem for regulatory bodies, the FAA and the EASA specifically. So ASU has worked hard for a couple of years to find a solution to this, and the solution that has come about is what we refer to as a TSO recovery program, in which ASU works in conjunction with Harris and L3, with the manufacturers, to enable us to do a couple things. One is we can recover non-TSO goggles into a TSO goggle, new data plate, same serial number, but we also have the opportunity to upgrade from green to white in a manner that's acceptable to the FAA. So the FAA has accepted this and approved it, and so we're just in the final stages of sorting out the details before we can begin accepting NVGs.
Yeah, that's an exciting program, and we're really happy to be part of it. If anybody wants to find out more about the TSO recovery process, or if your goggles will be eligible, you can visit our website at asu-nvg.com/recovery and check that out and learn more about the program. So let's get back to information about the white phosphor goggles. So Kim, can you talk to us a little bit about some concerns that people have expressed about white phosphor and how we address those?
Certainly. So one of the concerns that I hear about, and frankly I had at the beginning before we had a lot of familiarity with white, is that green phosphor is better because our eyes can detect more shades of green than any other color. And while that's true, we don't give any of that up with white phosphor. As I explained earlier, we have the three different kinds of cone cells, green, red, and or blue, in our eye. And with the green, we're using all of our green cone cells. Mm-hmm. With white, we're using all the green cone cells plus all of the white and the red cone cells. So we're using 100% essentially of our day vision, where with the green, we're only using approximately 1/3. So we don't lose any of that contrast. Another concern is that the white is so much brighter, and it's going to impact how well I can see if I have to raise my goggles. And that isn't really true either, because when we change the color of the phosphor, we're not changing any of the energy that's emitted, or the amount of energy, I should say, that's emitted from the goggle. We are changing the light spectrum, but we're not changing the amount of energy. And so we really have a very, very small impact on the rod cells, our night vision, in the goggle. And because this leads to people questioning, if I have to raise my goggles, it's going to take me longer to adapt to a dark condition. And the reality is that we have a transition period of 30 seconds to 5 minutes, and that's only a rule of thumb. It really can be 30 seconds to 10 minutes or 12 or 15 minutes, depending on the how bright the image is that we're looking at, green or white, depending on how bright our aircraft cockpit lighting is, depending on how bright the ambient light is outside of the cockpit. Are we using our searchlights? That worry comes to us really from the military side of things, where they're working in a tactical lights out environment, but doesn't really apply to civilian operations where light is our friend. Our aircraft searchlights really enhance the view of the goggle. And if I raise my goggles, and because I've possibly had a failure of some sort, I haven't lost the ability to use my searchlights and to look outside. So it really has there isn't any real detrimental effect of using white when compared to green goggles in the civil or the military environment, because it's such a rare event.
Yeah. So can you share an example of an operator that's adopted white phosphor that maybe had one of those concerns?
Well, we've had a number of operators or sometimes individual personnel that I've talked to that were concerned about the transition from green to white. And really their concerns, as I expressed earlier, that I had initially with this. And what we've found, or I found personally, when I go back and visit with those folks, is that once they've used it and they've lived with the white a little bit, because it is a different view, and it can take a little bit of getting used to for some people. For some, it's they're like ducks to water and they love it right off the bat. Yeah. And others have to fly it over a couple nights to really feel that they like it. But when they get past that initial, oh, this is different, and start flying with it, nearly everybody, there are still some that like the green, but nearly everybody really likes the transition into white phosphor.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. Like integrating that into your operations, that there is a little bit of an adoption period, but just getting them in their hands, getting them, looking through them, using them in operations is a real critical part to really seeing the value and seeing the benefits in it. So what would you say to somebody if they were considering trying white phosphor?
Oh, I'd say absolutely go for it. I'm a firm believer and proponent, and maybe I can be viewed as biased, certainly, but I'd say schedule a demo if you have a question. Visit us at one of the shows, but seeing is believing. The science behind the white phosphor is there, supporting all of the benefits that I have discussed, and the white phosphor image really is much more optimized for the human anatomy, human vision system than green-only phosphor.
And so what kind of cool things does the future hold for NVG operators?
That also is an interesting question. I started flying with the full-face goggles back in 1979. They were really heavy, really limited on peripheral vision. In fact, they had no peripheral vision. Yeah. And they were a challenge. There's no question. And while the goggles now, the Anvis 9 and the older Anvis 6s even, were a lighter goggle, they're still heavy. We wind up putting a lot of weight on our head and neck when we have a helmet and goggles and batteries, battery pack, maybe counterweights, lip lights, various things, and all that is mounted to a head and neck and skeletal and muscular system that wasn't designed for that, right?
Yeah.
It was designed for a head of hair and and not much else. So the industry as a whole has been looking to lighten that load, and ASU has found a way to do that. So we have a new product coming out. It's in development now. We're close to first article production, and it's going to be a big step forward. We're going to take about a third of the weight of the goggle off the head, and we're going to increase by a small amount the peripheral vision that crews will have and be able to look around the goggle. Really a big step forward. This is going to be a real game changer.
Yeah, it's an exciting time, definitely. We've seen the technology advance, and now we've taken a lot of steps to really lighten that load. Like you said, a system that's your biology that's meant to hold your head. Now we're putting all this equipment on it, and so we definitely want to put the operators first and lighten that load as much as possible. So it's an exciting time. Well, I appreciate the time that you've spent with us and for sharing your knowledge with our listeners. If our listeners have any questions about the white phosphor, about TSO recovery, about this new product coming to market, feel free to give us a call. You could reach us at 1-208-426-8117. And we appreciate your time, and I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
As we wrap up, I'd like to thank our guest for being on the show and thank our valued listeners for joining us for the ASU Aviation Conversation audio series and advancing the understanding of aerial NVG operations through discussion and shared learning. You'll find this and other episodes of the ASU Aviation Conversation audio series on our website at asu-nvg.com/conversation. You can also subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, or any other podcast streaming source to stay up on the latest episodes.